Hello, people. Welcome back to another video by your good friend Chad Marco, the Big Aniki. Make sure you guys tag that like button and check out my other social. Always forget media. Okay, so October, man, was a very fun month for me. You know, that's my month of horror games and horror movies, and it's sadly over with. But you know, during the last weekend of October, I had a fun Halloween weekend, and I was just binge watching horror movies. You know, the earlier part of the month, I was watching a bunch of Japanese or Asian horror. I made a video about that. But this video is going to be specifically about the movies that I watched over a Halloween weekend and what I thought about them. So it's going to be very similar to the J Horror recommendation video where I'm going to list the movie that I watch, give a brief description of it, and then I'll tell you whether or not I recommend it for you guys to watch. But the last one I'm saving because it's the best. So the very last movie is going to be the big dog out of all of them, the best movie I watched over the course of the Halloween weekend. So let's get right to it. So the first movie I watched was The Blob from 1988. So the funny thing about this is a movie where, and by the way, for Halloween, I watch only movies that I haven't seen before. I make a few exceptions. I have a throwback that I threw in here as well, but I'll make a few exceptions. Now, The Blob is one of those movies where growing up, I saw bits and pieces of it, but I never just sat down and watched it. You know, back in the day when we watched television, movies would come on, but they had commercial breaks. So I might turn on TV and The Blob is on commercial. Now I'm downstairs getting something to eat or playing a video game, right? So I seen bits and pieces of it, but I never just sat down and watched it from beginning to end. So it's like I knew some parts of it, but I didn't know all of it. So this is my first time really sitting down and watching it. So The Blob is about an alien. Well, actually, I think it's a twist. But for now, we'll say it's an alien. It lands in this small town, and it starts off as like this small little like piece of almost gelatin type substance, and it goes around and it absorbs organic matter, and it grows and it grows and it grows, and it's damn near indestructible. And so it's basically about this giant blob monster that's going around absorbing people. And it's very difficult for the townspeople to deal with, to say the least. So this is like a science fiction monster horror movie. And so this movie in particular is funny because I think back to the original, because years ago I went and I watched the original Blob. The new one is so much better than the original. I hate to say it, but this is a perfect example of the remake clearly outdoing the original. The original Blob movie is so boring, man. It doesn't hold a candle to this. And you know, I would say this is like a fun horror movie, but at the same time, it could be pretty grotesque at the same time, because I didn't expect like just how graphic some of the deaths were. So it is like a fun horror movie, but it gets pretty graphic, to be fair. But what I recommend is not a strong recommendation, but sure, if you're looking for something like fun and somewhat lighthearted, it's a cool horror movie. So next we have Night of Fear. So this came out in 1973, and it's relatively short. It's less than an hour long, and it's about this woman whose car ends up, well, not necessarily crashing, but there was a trap laid out where her car crashed, and there's a weird guy that is stalking and trying to attack her and capture her for some reason. Now, one of the interesting things about this movie is that there's no dialogue. Everything in the movie, it sounds, it screams, things like that, but there are no words being said throughout the entirety of the movie. I guess that was like a creative choice. But this movie was trash. It was it was a trash ass movie. I was just looking for like a good 70s horror movie with I guess you could say like the Ted Bundy vibes. You know, stalker, serial killer chasing after young white women and whatnot. and didn't quite get what I was looking for with this one. It does have an interesting twist, but definitely would not recommend this. It's a trash ass movie. So next I have Cold Prey 2, which came out in 2010. So Cold Prey, I saw the first one years ago, and so I finally got around to watching the second one this Halloween. And Cold Prey, just this is a follow up to the original, and I guess I'll give you a brief description of the original. In the original movie, you got typical horror movie setup, right? 5 friends out on a skiing trip, and they one of them hurts his ankle, and then they decide to crash in an abandoned cabin or something, and this serial killer shows up and starts taking them out one by one. And so this is the sequel to that, where you have the girl that survived, and spoiler alert, the killer wasn't really dead, of course, and now she's in a hospital having to go through the ordeal all over again. Much like Halloween, going into Halloween 2, right? Was it Halloween 2? Like the survivor ending up in the hospital and having to survive, Michael Myers there. But anyway, this movie, I would recommend Cold Fear. I mean, Cold Fear is that trash ass game. I recommend Cold Prey 1 and 2. It's a pretty straightforward horror movie. I wouldn't say that it's got anything really special going for it, but as far as like that kind of generic slasher formula, it does everything right. It does everything by the book, and it does it right. So if that's specifically what you're looking for, I'll recommend it. But you're not going to get anything really different or special with Cold Prey. It just does the slasher formula very, very well. Just very solid. So next we have another sequel. We have Evil Dead Trap 2, which came out in 1992. Not to be confused with Evil Dead, of course, the American movie starring Bruce Campbell, directed by I think Sam Raimi. This is Evil Dead Trap, and I'm assuming that the name is probably inspired by Evil Dead. Now, this is a very strange Japanese horror movie. It's a sequel to a movie, of course, Evil Dead Trap 1, and I really like Evil Dead Trap 1. I only watched it one time because it's kind of heavy, to be honest. Those are pretty fucked up parts. But this one seems to have nothing to do with the first. It just seems like they just tacked the name up there. But it's about this overweight woman who works as a film projectionist at a movie theater, and she starts seeing like this weird kid that's popping up around, and at the same time there's a serial killer going around killing women. And so this movie in particular, it's again, man, it's J-horror, so it's very strange. It's hard to understand exactly what's going on. There are supernatural elements, like everything is not exactly as it seems, but it's more, to me, it's more of like a psychological piece, because even though there's a serial killer going around killing women, it's like that's sort of happening in the backdrop of things. It's like it's happening, but that's not really the focus of the movie. Like the focus of the movie seems to be on the main character and her mental issues, her past traumas and things like that. And now she's connected to the killings in a way, and you'll see that pretty soon. But even then, it's like, what the fuck? It's really, man. I still don't know what the fuck was going on. But still, a very interesting movie, just hard to follow. But I think where it really shines, like I said, is more in like the psychological aspect of it, like the characters, the main character, Remy, her girlfriend, Hideki. It's just a great character piece and good psychological horror. Really, it doesn't amp up and get really super bloody and fucked up until the end. That's when it really gets going. But what I recommend it, yeah, if you're into like weird Japanese horror, for sure. The only thing about it, I hate to say it, because man, I think they picked the wrong leading actress for this movie. She was too fat. I'm sorry, bro. And you know, it's like me, I always said, just for example, right? Let's say you have a movie on like a submarine or something like that, but then everybody's so hot. Everybody's like beautiful. It's like, man, come on. You don't have like supermodel people working on goddamn submarines and shit like that. Like, it'd be like two fat Mexican bitches, right? Old white dude, something like that. But they'll have like supermodels, right? So I always said I wanted to see more average looking people in movies. Nah, not, not this average. I'm not lying when I say this movie is good, but they did a poor job casting the main girl. She was just too damn fat, bro. They should have they should have just got like a cute ugly. I get it because she's supposed to be like introverted and traumatized and shit and having trouble with men. So she kind of fits that femcel archetype physically, but you ain't gotta fit it that close. Right? Get a cute ugly bitch or ugly cute bitch. Either way, that bitch is too damn big. But I will recommend it. Next we have Maxine. So Maxine is actually the last of the X trilogy, which are horror movies. You know, it started with X and then the prequel movie Pearl, and this is the sequel to X, Maxine, starring the main character from the first movie. And you know, these movies pretty much were sort of a blend of the world of sex and Hollywood, and you know, that desire to be famous with horror. It's like just pure Hollywood porn smut type horror, but done in a very I would say high quality way. And I like the first movie. I like the second one. I think Maxine is probably the weakest out of the bunch. And just to give it a quick plot summary, you know, at this point, the main character, she's moved back to Hollywood and she's putting the events of the first movie behind her. But then somebody has found out about what happened on that farm years ago where everybody except her died, and they're trying to blackmail her basically. And she's having to fight back against blackmailers as there's a serial killer going through the city targeting people close to her. So, you know, yeah, like I said, it's a decent movie. It's a decent movie, but I do think it's the weakest out of the X trilogy. If really, damn, I have to recommend it because I would recommend X and Pearl. And you don't want to stop there. You want to like wrap it up. But I'm just saying, I think this is the weakest one out of the bunch. I feel like so much of the focus was on the main character, which isn't a bad thing. But I think like the slasher serial killer parts were just kind of undercooked basically. And the twist at the end was predictable and kind of lame. And, yeah, I think that's really what it came down to. You know, Pearl worked better as a character piece because, you know, that wasn't so much like the first movie where it was just a straightforward slasher. It had more to do with Pearl gradually becoming what you saw in the first movie. And I feel like the third movie is kind of trying to blend the two extremes, but it doesn't work well. I think they really should have copied more the formula of the first movie. Somehow, it didn't work for me, but I gotta recommend X and Pearl, and you're not gonna go wrong watch. I'm not saying it's bad. I just think it's the weakest one out of the group. So next we have VHS Halloween, which came out in 2025. So this is the latest VHS movie. It seems like every year we get a new VHS movie, or just about every year. And if you don't know, VHS is like a horror story compilation movie. So it's like, it's set up like your typical horror movie compilation movie where, you know, you'll have a main story that's playing out throughout the entirety of the movie, but it's broken up by individual stories. So, and I think this one has about 4 or 5 short stories that occur between the main story. And the main story is about this, like, I guess, evil fucking company that's trying to create a new soda, and they're experimenting on people. And as they're drinking the prototype sodas, they're turning into like monsters. They're killing each other. They're blowing up. That's like the main story. But the individual stories, they were okay. There was one in particular though that was that was kind of good, but it was pretty heavy. It was about like a serial killer that targeted children. And that kind of came out of nowhere, bro, because a lot of the stories up to that point were like kind of like just comedy horror. That one was just, damn, it was fucked up. I would say it's worth it just to see that one. That story about the serial killer that was targeting children, that one was the standout. You know, VHS would usually have about one standout story. You know, like looking at, like, I think from the first movie it was the vampire one, right? I like you. But there's always at least one standout, and that's the standout here. Would I recommend it as a whole? Not really. It's like VHS at this point is like barely mid normie horror, but it's not bad. It's, you know, it's the type of shit you throw on and clean the house. Like if you need to clean up, if you're behind on your spring cleaning, put on VHS and then pop in every now and then. But it's not a strong recommendation. It's all right though. So next we have A Quiet Place, which came out in 2018. I finally got around to watching this. I always wanted to see this because when I read the plot synopsis, I was like, oh, this sounds very interesting. So this movie is about so there was like an alien invasion, or these creatures showed up on Earth, and they're very powerful and dangerous, but they're basically blind. But they hunt through sound. They have very sensitive hearing. They have these like the flesh on their head spreads out, and you can see like their giant ears on the inside, and they can hear very, very well. And that's how they hunt. They hear something, boom, they're after it. And so this movie is about, I think it's about maybe like a year or so after they first showed up, and it follows a family as they're trying to survive the ordeal. And what's interesting about the movie is just the emphasis on how they have to be quiet all the time. They walk around barefoot. They don't talk. They communicate through sign language. I think the daughter was deaf, so they already knew how to communicate through sign language. Dude, this don't mean shit. I'm like, okay. But because the daughter was deaf, they already knew how to communicate, so they had that advantage. So the whole movie is pretty much just watching them try to survive this ordeal. And then the crazy thing about it, like, they're preparing because the wife is pregnant, and you know, so when a baby is born, it comes out crying and whining. So they're stressing, trying to figure out how they're gonna deal with this baby that's about to be born, that's gonna be crying all the time, and that's gonna be a dead giveaway for the aliens to come kill their ass. So, but this is definitely a good movie. Like it's not as, I don't know how to put it. Like it's not soft. It's not soft. Like there's some intense moments, like even from the very beginning. But I found it to be kind of a light watch, you know. And when I say light, like for me, a heavy horror movie is one I watch one time and I don't want to watch it again because it's depressing. This movie, I didn't really find it to be depressing. Like it's somewhat like the way the story unfolds. Like, yeah, there are some intense moments, but overall, it plays out almost like, and I hope this doesn't deter anybody, but it almost plays out like a Disney movie in a way. Like there's something just PG. It might be a PG-13 movie. I'm not even sure, but there's just something PG-13 about it. Even though there are some pretty crazy moments. But I definitely recommend it. It's a good, high quality horror movie, good polished casting, all that. And again, it's interesting just seeing how they adapt to these creatures and all the different ways they have to, you know, figure out how to not make noise but still trying to survive and live a relatively normal life. And so next we have No, the Case is Happily Solved. So this came out in 1973. I believe this is like a classic, what's the word? Galileo Italian horror. So this is more like a crime horror movie. Definitely not pure horror. So the plot is pretty straightforward. It's about this guy. He was out fishing and he witnessed a murder. He saw this guy kill this woman. and he saw it and ran away. And the guy followed him, was trying to see what he was gonna do. But the guy who witnessed the crime, he didn't tell anybody. For some reason, he kept thinking about it and thinking about it. He was like, I'm not gonna. And he just decided, I'm not gonna tell anybody. It's not my business. The guy who actually committed the crime ended up telling the police it was him. And so now he's having to prove his innocence after witnessing the murder, but the murderer is saying it was him. And he got no one to blame but himself because he didn't even go to police to tell anybody. And it's a funny movie just watching this guy dig himself deeper and deeper into the hole by not going on ahead and telling the police. He go home and go to sleep, get some lunch. It's crazy, man. But would I recommend it? Not really. It's a decent movie, but the ending kind of, like, the ending felt rushed, and I felt like it undermined the seriousness of everything that happened up to that point. The ending really hurt it a lot, to be fair. I'm not gonna explain exactly why, but I wouldn't really recommend it. And so next we have, now I know this is probably questionable as a horror movie, right? But Chainsaw Man Rizé Arc 2025. So I went to the movie theaters to watch this. Now come on, a title like Chainsaw Man, it fits right in on the list. About the closest we'll get to anime horror as possible, right? So I'm sure we all know Chainsaw Man, the anime. And this particular movie is about the arc where he meets Rizé, which is a young lady that seems to take a liking to him, but actually turns out to be the bomb devil. And so they have a big clash throughout Japan. That's pretty much what the movie is about. I would recommend it if you're into Chainsaw Man and anime. You can tell a lot of money and care went into this movie, similar to Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer was way better than this, though. I ain't gonna lie. Demon Slayer was better than this. This was good. But Demon Slayer was definitely better. I would only recommend it if you're already into anime and Chainsaw Man. This might be an odd pick for a horror movie list, but it was on. I went to the movies to go see it, and it's called Chainsaw Man. It fits in. So the next one is When Evil Lurks. So I'm not sure. This might be Italian horror or maybe just Mexican. I'm not sure. But it was subtitled, so I know it wasn't American. But this movie is about these two brothers who live in like this small village. And there's this phenomenon where people show up and they're like possessed by a demon. They call them the Rotten. Now, the thing about the Rotten is that when they appear, it starts to cause little calamities around the area. But in order to successfully deal with the Rotten, you got to get a right person with the right tools to destroy it. You can't kill it through conventional means. If you try to shoot it or you try to stab it to death, whatever, like, it'll only make the curse worse. It basically works as like a curse, where once it appears, it kind of curses the land around it, and you got to get rid of it. But if you try to kill it normally, and it's gonna make everything worse and start possessing people. And so they find the Rotten, and they try to just, instead of killing it, because they know killing it is gonna make it worse, they try to take it and move it somewhere, and they end up losing the damn body on the way, and then the curse ends up spreading and getting worse and worse as people keep dealing with it the wrong way, basically. So this is a really good movie. But it's like, what I didn't like about it was just the conditions of dealing with the Rotten and the curse. It felt so unfair, because you got to have a specific person with the specific tools to get rid of a Rotten the right way. And if anything else, and it's just gonna make it worse, it starts possessing people, and then they start killing people, and then it starts possessing more people. It just gets worse and worse, man. And I liked the movie, but it just felt hopeless. It felt hopeless because it's like you got your hands tied. I can't shoot them. I can't stab them. I can't move them. You got to get, again, specific. It was too specific in terms of dealing with. So the whole movie, it just feels like just pure incompetence. But you can't blame the main characters at all because it's just so hard to deal with the situation. But it's a really good movie, and I would definitely recommend it. So next we have The Mist, Stephen King, 2007. And so I finally got around to watching The Mist. This is another movie that been on my radar for years and years, but I never sat down and watched it. And so The Mist is about this man who takes his boy with him to the supermarket, and people were kind of recovering. I think it was a hurricane that happened the day before, or a storm, and they're going to the supermarket to try to buy supplies and food, things like that. All of a sudden, this thick mist shows up and pretty much covers the entire town. Now, somehow, some way, this mist has brought with it these otherworldly creatures that are very dangerous. And if you go outside into the mist, there's a high likelihood that you're going to run into one of them. And they come in different shapes and forms. You got flying ones, you got spider creatures, you got giants with tentacles that'll scoop you up. And so basically, all the people that were in the supermarket when the mist showed up, they're stuck in there. And they're having to figure out how to deal with the situation, trying to fortify the supermarket, but also dealing with each other, because you got different people with different ideas on what the source of the mist and the creatures are and how they should handle the situation. And so it's a good movie, but honestly, I think it's, for me, a little overrated. I was expecting more. Yeah, it's not bad. I'm not trying to shit on The Mist here, but I was expecting more. Kind of like when I went and watched A Quiet Place. It's like its reputation precedes it, and it lived up to it. The Mist was like, it's okay. But I think The Mist at this point is more so known for the ending, the twist ending, if you will. I'm sure you've all probably seen the fucking pictures. If you've never even seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But would I recommend it? Honestly, I don't strongly recommend it, to be fair. It's a good sci-fi movie, but there's much better. I gotta be honest, bro. I'm not trying to be a contrarian here, but I wasn't that moved by The Mist. But it's a good movie. It's a good movie, but I'm not riding this penis. I'm not riding today. So next we have Night of the Reaper, which came out in 2025. And so this is kind of a standard whodunit slasher type movie where you're trying to figure out who's the killer. And so it starts off, I think the movie takes place in like the 80s or late 70s or something like that. I think the 80s. And it starts off, standard horror movie setup. You got a babysitter babysitting late at night, and then stalker seems to be following and watching her. He ends up breaking into the house and murdering her and recording it on VHS. And so the movie is basically about her sister coming to town and coming to terms with the murder of her sister, which is of course unsolved. But right as this is happening, somebody is mailing the tapes of some of the killings to the sheriff. And so it seems like the serial killer is getting active again right as the sister of one of his victims has appeared. And so, like I said, this movie it's a slasher / whodunit type of flick. And man, I'll be honest, bro. When I watch stuff like this, I'm trying to figure out who it is. I'm pretty good. I ain't gonna lie, I'm pretty good at it. They got my ass this time, bro. They got me. Man, I was like, it was what? I didn't even think about it. I was like, Lord, they got me. So would I recommend this? Yes. Not a look. This ain't like an instant classic or anything like that. But if you're looking for a new horror movie, this came out in 2025. This is probably one of the better ones that came out this year. We get a lot of trash ass horror movies now that everybody has pretty much a film crew in their phone. You got a lot of bad horror movies popping up these days. But this actually was pretty good. So I would recommend it if you're looking for something more recent. And if you like the challenge of trying to figure out who the killer is And I really appreciate that. The clues are there. The clues are there for you to figure it out. You just got to pay attention. I thought I was paying attention, and they got my ass. So next we have I Drank Your Blood from 1970. So this movie is about this group of Satanists or devil worshippers. Now, to be fair, they're like pseudo devil worshippers. They're like, yeah, they worship Satan, but they're hippies too. Like, they're not really that dangerous. They just cause mischief and stuff like that. And so they show up to this small town, try that in a small town. And there's a girl that is witnessing one of their rituals. And they catch her in the act. And so they beat her up. And I think they sexually assault her. I'm not sure. But she ends up going back home and telling her grandpa and her little brother. And the grandpa goes to confront the hippies. And, he gets beat up and humiliated by them as well. And so now it's on the little brother to try to get revenge. And so what he does is there's a rabid dog in the area. He kills the dog. And he takes the dog's blood. The dog had rabies. And so he took the dog's blood and he put it in the food of the Satanist hippies, the satanic hippies. And so he ends up giving the hippies rabies as revenge for what they did to his sister. But of course, this ends up getting way out of control because now you have satanic hippies with rabies going around trying to kill everybody. And that's pretty much the core of what's happening with this story. Now, for me, it's kind of a funny B horror movie. I wouldn't strongly recommend it unless you're in the mood for that. It's kind of like when I said about Night of Fear. That's a 70s horror movie. And I was in the mood for something like that, but that didn't really hit the spot. I Drank Your Blood hit the spot. It's a nice B horror movie from the 70s. You got hippies practicing satanic rituals. You got, basically essentially like a zombie movie just with rabies, right? And so it really hit the spot because I had a taste for it. And so, but I wouldn't strongly recommend it. But if you're in the mood for that, if you like 70s horror, then I would say I Drank Your Blood is pretty decent. And so next we have Creepshow, 1982, classic horror anthology flick here. So Creepshow, another one of those movies where I seen it, but I never sat down and just watched it all the way through. And this is my first time really sitting down and watching it all the way through. Like I said, it's a horror anthology movie. You had a lot of big names in the horror industry working on this. You had Stephen King. You had George Romero. I think the makeup guy, what's his name? Tom Savini. I probably put his name up. But you had a lot of big names of horror working on this one. And, Creepshow was like presented as a magazine with, horror stories in it. And in the movies, it's like the stories are coming to life and you're watching them basically. So you got stories like there's a farmer and there's a meteor that lands on his farm. He touches it and he starts transforming. You got stories of, ghouls coming back to life and trying to get revenge. So overall, would I recommend it? Honestly, not strongly. I could tell like a lot of care went into creating this movie, and you had a lot of big names involved, even the actors. But I don't know, I guess for me, there was probably only one story in particular that had an impact on me. And I think it was the one where the guy found out that his wife was cheating on him and, he got revenge and then they came back after. Like, that was probably the best one for me. But most of the movies, just didn't really have much of an impact. I mean, this is kind of like the type of movie where you put it on, right? You got some cleaning to do, put Creepshow on, and you can't go wrong. But I wouldn't strongly recommend it. And so next we have Tetsuo 2, Body Hammer. I almost said Body Horror. So you guys remember during my Japanese horror adventure, I watched a movie called Tetsuo the Iron Man, and this is the sequel to that. Now, Tetsuo the Iron Man was very low budget. Low budget. I mean, I think they had less money than the Evil Dead crew back in the 80s. But this is the sequel movie, and they had a real budget this time around. And I think the movie benefited a lot from that. Man, it was so nice watching that idea, but with a budget and done at a much higher level of quality. I'm not gonna lie. But the movie is about very similar to the first movie, where there's a young man that has the ability to merge flesh with machine, and of course he used that power himself, and he can do different things, in terms of like manipulating his flesh and turning into weapons and things like that. But he's trying to create more people like himself, and so he's working with a scientist to create a way to essentially give other people his power and then have them under him. And so they target this guy who is the main character, and they kidnap his child, and they inject him with what is supposed to, turn him into sort of a light version of what the main Iron Man is, if you will, sort of as a fucked up experiment. And of course, he ends up undergoing the changes. Now, there's some twists and turns here, but essentially, it's about this guy who has now been experimented on to become, to become someone that can merge with machine, and he's trying to get revenge against the group that kidnapped his child. Now, would I recommend this? Yes, but you should definitely watch the first movie first. Like, I just feel like it's not gonna hit the same if you don't watch the first movie. And I do like the first movie, don't get me wrong. It's just the budget was so low. I think some of the ideas just weren't fleshed out very well because of it. This movie was refreshing for me because I just think it's such a good idea, but sometimes good ideas get hindered by low budget. Kind of like Evil Dead. That's why I love the Evil Dead remake, because it's like seeing that original idea, but with a big budget. And I think it benefited so much from that. And even though the story is pretty different in the second one, it's still like that's a similar premise, of machine merging with flesh, a story of revenge and things like that. So I would recommend this, but you kind of got to be into weird Japanese horror to really get it or to like it. I think it's probably not going to be for everyone. And so next, and this is my throwback. This is my throwback movie. I said, let me just pick a movie that I watched before 100 times, but haven't seen in a while. And that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake 2003. And I fucking love this movie. Man, I hadn't watched this in a long time. Usually when I feel like watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'll go for the classic. Because the classic, to me, is lighter than the remake. The remake is heavy as fuck, bro. That shit is like, I love it, but it's depressing, bro. Cause it's just, as great as the classic one is, I think the remake is much more intense. Like the way Leatherface is portrayed in this movie is he's just like a killing machine. Like it's like it's the Jason Voorhees version of Leatherface. It's without all the goofy shit, the cross dressing, the makeup, all that stuff. It's just straight, I'm killing motherfuckers. And that's what I love about this movie, man. And I haven't watched it in a while. And I put it on, and it had been just enough time. Even though I watched this movie in like 100 times and listened to the commentary and all the goofs and the trivia, I know everything about this movie front to back. It's been long enough to where I was able to enjoy it again. And it just reminded me of why I love this movie so much. I would definitely recommend Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003. Again, this is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. That was my throwback one of the weekend. And so last but not least, this is the best movie that I watched the whole weekend. This is it. It's top dog. Black Phone 2021. Now, I'm sure you guys have seen Black Phone 2 advertised for theaters. I wanted to watch it, but I was like, I haven't seen the first one. So I said, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to chill out, watch it in my room. You know what? The thing about this movie, I knew this movie was going to be good. I knew this movie was going to be fire, bro. Like, when I seen the commercials for it years ago, I was like, yeah, that movie looked good. But it looked, like, heavy. And this movie is the heaviest. This movie is the heaviest. And I think, for me, like, what makes it kind of hard, like, to watch is because it's about a child serial killer. You know, this ain't like a typical slasher. You got stupid teenagers or young adults being killed off. You can just laugh at it and shit. Like, these are just kids. And I think the way the movie is presented, like, it's so grounded to where, like, you care about each and every victim as, you know, you kind of find out about them. But basically the movie is about this town where there's a serial killer going around snatching up young boys. They call him the Grabber. And so there's been a handful of boys kidnapped already. And the main character, Finney, he ends up being the latest victim. So he gets kidnapped off the street and brought to the torture kill dungeon of the Grabber. Now, the thing about it is that him and his sister seem to have inherited some sort of like psychic power from their mother, but it manifests in different ways. For his sister, she has dreams that gives her clues as to the whereabouts of the Grabber. And for Finney, there's this black phone, hence the name, in the dungeon that allows him to communicate with the previous victims of the Grabber. And they're trying to give him advice on how to get out. They're telling him what they know and what they were able to learn before they were killed by the Grabber. And so they're all trying to give him different pieces of advice so that he can try to escape. And man, this movie was fantastic. I love this movie, but I was stressed out the whole time, bro. Like, the second I put the movie on, I felt tense. I don't know, like it was just that type of movie, bro, where it's like I just knew from the subject matter that I was going to just be affected by this movie, man. And like I said, it's the fact that it's young boys being kidnapped. It's one of those things, I think it hits me because, you know, I think about the vulnerability of being that young and being a child, and just how there are so many 12, 13, 14-year-old boys and girls that got snatched up, never to be seen again, or found head cut off, found in a ditch or something like that, mutilated and raped. And, you know, I think that's why it kind of touched me in a way, because just it's the way they presented it. It was just so real, so grounded. Like, there was no goofiness about it whatsoever, bro. Like, it was almost like taking that phenomenon of, you know, kidnappings and murders and rapes of the 70s and 80s and putting it into a movie, but just adding that supernatural twist to it, you know. And man, heavy fucking movie, Lord. Like, I loved it, but I'm not watching it again for some time. And I probably won't even watch the sequel till like next year, bro. That movie had me stressed out. But that was the best movie that I watched over the course of the weekend, bar none, easily. So that was my horror movie Halloween 2025 recommendation list. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I'll see you in the next video. So, Johnny.